It's the best Tuesday of all the Tuesdays because Stacy is here. So, for those of you who may not know, Stacy Cross, who is right here and looking radiant, may I say, is Cheryl and I's health specialist for the McDougall 12-day program, right? Since we've known each other since July. I feel like we need to have an anniversary, Stacy.
We do. We were just talking about me coming to visit you guys, and so maybe I need to come out there in July, although it's probably going to be very hot. Yes.
July is, chances are good it's going to be very hot. It changes so much, but it's been like 60 some degrees now and it's not even March yet. So I'm scared. That's all I
Yeah,
have to
same
say is
here.
I'm a little scared. So Stacy, why don't you introduce yourself just a little bit for anybody who might not know you and tell, what a McDougall support specialist is. Those of you who are watching, welcome. And put your questions for Stacy are about the McDougall Starch solution, the McDougall 12-day program, things like that. Go ahead and put those away. Though Stacy and I wind our way to interesting topics, even if you don't have any questions today. All right, to you, Stacy.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, first of all, thanks so much again for having me here. I love hanging out with you guys. This is one of my favorite things to do as a support specialist and a human. I just like hanging out with you guys. So, I am Stacy Cross. I am a support specialist for the McDougall 12-day online program. I do a lot of other things for the McDougalls, but that's my biggest role. And what that means is during the course of the 12-day online program that we run every couple of months, I am paired up with approximately half of our patients each program. And I just hold their hand all the way through the program. I meet with them daily for the 12 days of the program. And then for the year following the program, I continue to follow up with them, providing all kinds of support, getting them any resources they need, answering questions about the program, the diet, helping them, troubleshoot anything that comes up. If they have family reunions or a wedding to attend or any other social events, which usually tend to be kind of stumbling blocks for people in this, with regard to them adopting this way of eating. It can be a real challenge to go out and do social things. And so I just help them. I help them come up with a plan and strategies for how to navigate all those things for that year following the program. And without tooting our horn, I have to say that Tiffany and I think, have the most special and, dare I say, most important job with the McDougall 12-day program, because we do get to be with you for a year. And, you really do go through all of the things in life in the course of a year. And so a lot of times people come to us and say, I've been trying to eat this way on my own for a very long time. And it wasn't until I had the support of the McDougall program and the support specialist that it all clicked into place. Because normally when you're following a diet or a plan or anything like that, even if there is a community aspect to it, you're virtually on your own when it comes down to it. And in this case, you're not. You have a buddy to help you through it. And let me just say also, even though we talk a lot here on your show about weight loss and weight loss strategies and all of that, we have a lot of people coming to us with lots of very significant health issues that they're trying to address. They're trying to, without being dramatic at all, they're trying to save their own lives. And so it's very serious. It's not just cutesy, like, let's get you into that dress for the summer wedding that you're going to attend. It's let's see what we can do to continue to lower and stabilize your blood pressure and your cholesterol and all those kinds of things, and some of your symptoms that are bothering you. So anyway, it's an honor. It's a privilege to be a support specialist for the McDougall program. I believe so deeply in what we do and in the diet and the power of eating a starch-centered diet. And it's also a privilege to be here with you guys to talk about it. So thank you.
That's so sweet and so awesome. One of the things that's, and actually this is one of the first times people aren't asking a lot of questions yet. They'll all come at the end. I feel it. I can
Okay.
feel it in my bones. But
Yeah.
what I loved, and I like that you brought it up too, and I think that we end up talking about weight loss more because we get more questions about it, literally. But I think it is when I was in the 12-day program, because I have a very limited experience, because I went through it once, you've gone through it a bazillion times, basically, is that there were a lot of people with very serious health issues going through things. And so I think that's really important. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that it can be really hard to kind of just jump in because we've talked about this before. You can do the McDougall program without doing the 12 days. And if you can't afford it, that's kind of what you have to do. And there are some support groups and things like that. But I think the thing is you just have to be a little more assertive with yourself and with others about getting that help you need. Like, there have been some times, and I told Stacy, because I love Stacy. You guys know I love Stacy. Stacy knows I love Stacy. But then if I'm having a problem, I'm like, I really don't want to have my appointment with Stacy tomorrow. Just like every other human being alive, right? Like Cheryl goes to the regular doctor, who we love. We love our regular. She's like, I'm going to go to the doctor, right? And so I agree wholeheartedly with you saying it's the part of the program, the 12-day program, I think, I'm trying to think of how to put this in an exacting way. It's hard. But I think it's the part that keeps you, in the beginning, I feel like those 12 days are like super life-changing. But then I feel like, because now what are we? We're several months out. We're not quite halfway. I don't think, maybe we are halfway and I don't even know. It's close enough. Right? July, August.
You're 4 months in.
Okay,
4 months.
not so I was right. That was a guess. But it is a little harder because you do have more life to take on. Like, right? So when you do those 12 days, you're really changing your life around. You're rearranging things and pushing things off to other times. And so I think having the monthly check-in with you is super important to our progress. And also, if you're like me, and I think most people are like this, so you learn a lot and then it all makes sense, but then your whole life is swirling around you. And maybe it doesn't make as much sense in March as it did July because I'm kind of like a whole new person doing a whole new set of things, right? How would you explain, how things can change and how you keep, I'm trying to not necessarily keep them from breaking down, but keep everything consistent, or what verbiage would you use?
Well, it is very challenging because when people come into the 12-day program, there's a certain momentum and excitement around just attending the 12-day program, making that investment of time and finances and all of that. And people are ready. They're like, I am not going to spend all this money to fall down on my face. And they are prepared. A lot of times they will shop ahead of time. We do, of course, just like anything else, we get people who at the last minute are like, yeah, I think I'll do this. And so maybe they're not as, motivated but most people are very incredibly motivated to do really well during the course of the 12-day program. And just like with anything else, the motivation begins to wane at the end of it because you cannot maintain and sustain motivation long term. It's usually a short term, short lived thing. And so then the question becomes, well, where do I go from here? How do I continue on with my intention to eat this way indefinitely without motivation? And I hear this all the time where people say, I'm just not motivated. Well, I think the problem is that we're relying on motivation to get stuff done, and motivation waxes and wanes. It's very all over the place. You could literally just get a bad night's sleep and be completely unmotivated the next day. So then what are you going to do? Just eat donuts all day? I mean, you could, but you're probably not going to make it very far towards your health goals if you're if you're doing that every time you don't feel motivated. And so what happens when you have a support specialist, when you have the support of the program, of going through the program, you have someone to start to draw out of you, okay, maybe motivation isn't there. Maybe the excitement has dampered down just a little bit. Now what? How do I convince myself to keep going? How do I pull myself along towards my goals and not give up and throw the towel in? That's the benefit of having a support specialist who knows you, knows your medical history, has spent significant time with you. It's every day for 12 days straight. They've really gotten to know you and you them. And it's really a great thing to have somebody for a whole year through, because that's the other thing is you hit just about every life thing that could possibly be derailing in the course of a year. And I didn't personally realize that much until I started doing this role with the McDougall program and seeing everything that people go through in the course of a year. And so if you have your support specialist there to help you bounce back, and maybe you don't have motivation, but you have support, that goes a really long way.
I think that's such a great point too. And I do feel like I also get to know you from us doing these, though we don't get to talk for that long. It's not like we're sitting here hanging out for hours, y'all. Like I could see myself hanging out with Stacy for hours and chatting and taking walks and stuff. That just sounded like I just made us into like a romantic commercial for like.
I love it. I'm in. Let's do it.
Right? But there is something for me, because I'm the kind of person that I hate telling the same story over and over again. So like, even though we're just meeting once a month, and it's a short, precise meeting, I feel like I don't have to say all those things. I can go, you remember what happened in December? And Stacy does remember. It's not like that doctor that you hated that doesn't remember why you're there, even though your chart was at the door. And then we can just kind of move forward. And I really like that a lot. And someone was asking to the side, let me see, Jack Baby is saying, is the program open to Canadians? It's open to anyone. Stacy talks to people all over the world. The McDougall 12-day program is open to everyone. It is, to my knowledge, not covered by insurance. I don't know if there might be some other things, at least for us, it was not covered by insurance or anything like that. So you don't have to deal with that part. Would that be correct?
That's correct. We have had some people who have taken the paperwork to their insurance company and have attempted to get some reimbursement. And we've had people just have their insurance company cover it up to half. But I usually tell people, let that be a pleasant surprise. There's no harm in trying, but expect that you're probably paying completely out of pocket for the program. Unfortunately, this is just the state of medicine and the medical system in our country, is that this lifestyle medicine type of stuff just isn't covered and isn't valued as it should be for the life-changing potential it has to heal you. So, but maybe one day, we're always working
hopefully.
on it.
And so it is available to everyone. And Diana, and you've talked to we've had Diana talk before. She's down 12.2 pounds since January 1st doing starches. So
Wonderful.
That's really awesome. And Ellen Shapiro went through the program in January. 2022.
I love Ellen. Yes.
And she's saying her motivation is up and down. And I want to be clear, because my opinion is that that's normal, right? You get your moods go up and down, your energy level. You can't always spring clean your house. And you can't always spring clean your brain or whatever you're trying to work on. Mm-hmm. And Dilla is saying, I think you have to turn motivation into habits. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So habit formation is something that happens over the course of repeating the same thing over and over and over again until eventually it's automated. and it becomes natural. It becomes a natural part of your life. It's the reason why all of you guys brushed your teeth this morning or buckled your seatbelt when you got in the car this morning. It's just because you've done it 1,000 times and it's a no-brainer. You don't even have to think about it. I absolutely agree with her. I think that is such a good point, is that I don't know about turning motivation into habits. I'll have to chew on that a little bit more and think about that as a concept. But turning things into habits, is the name of the game. It's the end goal, because then you rely zero on motivation. It really has nothing to do with motivation. You're just running the script. And so that's kind of where I want to get people. That's my goal as a support specialist, is getting people to the point where it's just like so easy and automated to just make the right choices. But the only way to get there is to go through those clunky days where it's not automatic and easy and natural, and you feel bad and you feel kind of junky for a few days, and then maybe potentially not super confident for a few weeks until you get into the groove. And the groove is my favorite place for people to get. Dr. Lyle talks about getting into the groove. I like talking about it. Do you want me to just touch on that just a real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
About that?
Go where you would like to go today.
Okay. All right, cool. So the groove. All right. So I always think of this example because my sons, all four of them, were crazy about Berenstain Bears books when they were little bitty. And I am telling you guys, I have read every Berenstain Bears book, but I have probably read a Berenstain Bears book to a child like 7,000 times. Probably. Okay. It's crazy. And they all have lessons. And these books were written like a super long time ago. So some of the lessons are a little bit like, I don't know if that's the lesson we're going with these days, but there are some really good ones. And one of them is, in one of the books, Mama Bear is rolling her wheelbarrow out to go do her gardening. And she rolls it down the same path at the same time every day, over and over and over again. And what's happened is, over the course of time, she's worn a groove in the road. And she's worn a groove in the road such that her wheelbarrow's wheels are exactly in that groove, and they go right where they need to go, and takes her right down to her garden. Well, at one point in this book where they're just mentioning this isn't even the lesson of the book, but I thought it was so powerful, is at one point she decides she's going to go off the groove. Like she has to go over here instead of her normal route that day. And she has to ask her children to help her lift the wheelbarrow out of the groove, because she cannot do it on her own, because the groove is dug so low and so deep that in order to get the wheelbarrow out of the groove, it takes 3 people to get it out. That's the groove that I want all of us to be in with our eating. I want us to get so deep into a groove with our eating that it's actually harder to get out of the groove than it is to just stay right in it. The only way that you can have a groove that deep is to run it every day. The same thing. I'm not saying you have to eat the same thing every day, but the food guidelines that you have, that I think many of you guys are trying to follow, the McDougall diet, fruits, vegetables, water-rich cooked starches, starch-centered, at least 50% of your food by visual volume should be starches. If those are kind of the guidelines you're trying to run by, that's the groove. Every day, day in and day out, just eating that exact same way every day, until the groove is so deep that it's more uncomfortable to leave it than it is to just stay in it and keep going.
I love that. Karen's saying that's a great word picture, Stacy. And then Apple is saying something. Let me make this a little bit bigger.
Oh, that's Karen McKendry. Oh,
okay.
Karen.
And Apple saying, agree, motivation and willpower will wax and wane. They're not dependable sources of lasting change. And Stacy, you saw me write down something in the beginning when you started talking, and so I actually did write down motivation versus willpower. I was going to ask you about that, because to me, I think it seems like they're different in some ways, but in some ways they seem like not so dependable. Like willpower, it's very easy for me to have willpower when I'm motivated. If I wake up and I'm having a crappy day, I don't think, what shall I try and tempt myself today so I can say no? I try not to think about my willpower because it's probably not even there at that point. I mean, it is a little bit. Do you feel a difference yourself in those two
Yes.
words?
Yeah, I do. And let me just say, give credit where credit is due. Dr. Lyle is a dear pal of mine, and I appreciate him so much and have learned so much from him. And at one point, a long time ago, I heard him talking about willpower being an exhaustive resource, not an infinite resource. Exhaustive might not be exhaustible. Maybe that's the word. It You only have so much, and each day you only have so much. And what people don't realize is, you know, anything that taps on your willpower taps on your willpower. It's not just your food choices. So, for example, if you get up in the morning to an alarm and you really want to turn that thing off and go right back to sleep, but you chose to get up instead, willpower. That's a drain on your willpower. Okay. If you take your dog out for a walk and your dog's just like taking way too much time and frustrating and irritating you, and you didn't like yell at your dog, willpower. Okay. If
That's a lot of
you go to
willpower.
right, right. If you go out and make yourself your breakfast and you chose, oatmeal instead of biscuits and gravy, willpower. Okay. So all of these things are drains on your willpower. And the more different things that you have draining your willpower, the quicker you run out of it for the day. And so, what I heard Dr. Lyle say many years ago that I thought was so helpful is that we should not expect ourselves to really have any willpower. What am I talking about? Willpower. That was a hard one.
It is
At
hard to say.
all.
It's hard for me to
It
say
is.
too. Maybe it's a Southern thing.
I don't know. I said it like 15 times in a row without stumbling on it, and I think that was my quota. I hit my max. My body's like, you can't do this, girl. You're from the South. You can't say this word. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, so willpower, we should not be depending on willpower at all whatsoever in order to make good food choices. Instead, we have to set up our environment and set up our lives in such a way that we don't have to exert any willpower, maybe a little. You do have to still exert some. But, if I have like 5 containers of soup already made. I know it's a really nice, starchy soup with beans and rice and maybe some vegetables and things like that in there, and it's there. And all I have to do is take the container out of my fridge and heat it up in the microwave. That's easier than getting in my car and driving to such and such, fast food restaurant and getting the food. We have to make it easier to get our healthy foods that we know we want to be eating than it is to go get or apprehend the unhealthy foods, whether that means they're in our home or they're outside our home. Either way, our healthy foods, the foods we want to be choosing, have to be easier. That way we don't have to exert willpower in order to choose those things.
I love that. I love that so much, and it's so right. So I did a soup class, ironically enough, and so I have like Italian wedding soup and carrot soup and like African sweet potato soup and all these things. So that for us, and we had a talk last week because we've had some struggles the past couple of weeks, and getting back to having it where when we're overtired. So Cheryl and I are both a little overextended. So this is a new, harder, interesting time for us. And if all we have to do is reach and grab something and put it in the microwave, it's made it so much easier to eat. So
Right.
even if
Yeah.
and the only reason I'm mentioning that too, like if you're like, well, I can't cook every day or I can't do this every day, well, maybe the day you do cook 2 soups and put some in the
Mhm.
freezer is all I would mention. But I like the way you're talking about, instead of depending on willpower or motivation, things that are finite,
Mhm.
I want them not to be. I also want my hyper focus energy, like when I can do a book in like 2 weeks, I would like that to be all the time. Thank you. But it's not. And every time it happens, I don't know about you, every time I'm like really motivated or really in it to win it, I'm like, yeah, my brain's like, now I understand how to use this, instead of like, no, today is a good day for that, right? I
Right.
don't,
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be just I might be the only person who mistakes it, because I'm like going to be 59 years old soon. So evidently, this is a lesson I'm not really learning, you know.
Well,
um,
you know what? We're always learning and improving. That's never going to end, right?
it's very, very true. So there are a couple of questions, if you don't mind
Of
switching
course.
gears a little bit. And well, before we do, Diana's saying, I believe it depends on your mindset. So she thinks my mindset is I'm over feeling bad and not being at my desired weight. So maybe do you want to talk about mindset as well?
Yeah, mindset is tough because, I actually had one of my patients in my weight loss discussion group the other day who was talking about they just aren't they know themselves, and they know if they're not in the right mindset, it makes it impossible to do this stuff. And I think that that's true. Like, you need to be ready and willing to do what it takes, but I think mindset can also be fickle. And so we have to be ready for the days that our mind doesn't feel like it. Karen, who's here with us, who I love, sent me this video that was so awesome. And she basically just sent me this video where, anyway, this psychologist is talking um, about just motivation and how, and basically you have to do it for yourself. It doesn't matter how much you know, who you're listening to, who you're motivated by, or anything like that. When it comes down to it, you are the only one who can make your food choices. And it was really great. She sent it to me and it was wonderful. But I happened to listen to another one of this person's videos, and she was talking about how we all have like this inner 5-year-old who's like, I don't want to do that, like I don't want to, like, I don't feel like it or whatever. And just like we would with our children, or maybe you would with your dog or your cat or whatever, you have to talk back to that voice and say, that is too bad. You're going to have to do that. Now, that was particularly relatable for me because I have 4 kids. You guys, I don't know if I've ever shared that here. I have 4 sons. 4 sons.
That's a
It's a little bit
lot.
bananas. Yes, you should see all the reactions I get when I tell people that. They're like, I'm like, no, it's okay. I actually love it, you guys. I was made to be a boy mom. I totally love my boys, and they're wonderful, wonderful people who are going to be great little men. But anyway, I could really understand what she meant when she said you have to talk back to that 5-year-old. You can't just say, okay, well, you don't feel like it, then don't. My kids, they will say, like, we want chocolate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and dessert. Like, they want garbage all day, every day. If they had their choice, a lot of people say, oh, well, when you raise your kids with healthy food all around, they don't even want that stuff. That is not my experience. My kids still know what junk is, and they want it all the time. So I could just go, all right, sure, have what you want. And that could be the end of it. But I can't do that, right? I do want them to be healthy. I do want them to be raised with good habits. So I talk back to them and say, you are not going to like the way you feel if you eat that. We are not having that. We're going to have some nutritious food that's going to make your body feel good and make it run exactly as it was made to run. And no, I'm sorry. And sometimes they get pushback and they're really upset and they're really bummed out. And I'm the only mom on the planet that's not letting them eat chocolate for dinner. And I'm, why? And then I talk back to that. Well, because it's just not how we're going to eat here. And I'm trying to raise you with good habits. And I want you to be healthy your whole life long. And I love you. That's why, we need to be doing that with our inner 5-year-old. And by the way, the end of what you say when you talk back to yourself should always be, because I love you. Not because you're a slob, or because you're lazy, or because you're overweight, or because you've never done it before. Don't berate yourself to victory. That's not how it ever works. You have to love yourself to victory and to your goals and to your wins.
And that can be really hard.
Yes.
I mean, I know for myself, I've been trying to work on my self-talk, but I've definitely, over my lifetime, bullied myself through things, for sure, instead of doing it with love and kindness. And I agree with you. And you can tell, I felt it when you were talking about it too, so I suspect some other people were as well. And then Delia was saying, kind of like going along with the same train of thought, a failure plan is helpful. And take a nap, eat the emergency date. They always make fun of my emergency date, or wherever you need, or whatever you need in your plan. Because for a while, people thought, they were like, how does Cheryl feel about your emergency date? And I'm like, I don't really like dates. Like, it took me a while to understand how that sounded. But like, I don't take my car that often, and I can keep a date in my car for months without having an issue with it. So that's why, because it's always when I take my car, I'm out somewhere and something happens. But I like having a failure plan. And then when we were coaching with Howard Jacobson in like, 2019, before the pandemic, and one of the things that I liked about his coaching, and I feel like Dr. Lyle talks about this too, in that, at some point you may not make the best choice. And then just know that that's not an ending point, that's a beginning point. So which I did not, I had grits today and scrambled tofu, but if I had a donut today, I would, and Stacy knows, I fess everything up to Stacy. Cheryl will be like, well, we're not going to tell Stacy. I'm like, I thought about eating a donut. I will tell Stacy. But, if I had a donut today and I was talking to Stacy or talking to you guys, then I wouldn't just go, yeah, I'm a terrible person. Now I can't do anything. Now I just deserve to be sick and unhappy the rest of my life. Because if you guys hear me sort of saying this, maybe you can recognize it when you're saying it to yourself, because it's a little more insidious. But the thing is no, you go, well, I did a thing. Yeah, my stomach kind of hurts. I try to look and go, here's the reasons I don't really want to do this again. Without being like, you should know better, da-da-da-da-da, because that's the stuff that's not going to get me to that next step. And then if my stomach's hurting, I probably would go and put some stuff in the slow cooker so dinner could be ready without me having to think about it. That's one thing I could do. And again, I want to be real clear with you guys that I am not any kind of perfection sort of person. I have my ups and downs, and I have my difficulties as well. And one of the reasons I like to tell you guys that is because the thing is I think most people do. I mean, Stacy knows more of a cross section, but I don't think anyone or very few people just go, oop, okay, I'm reset, I'm good now. I'm never going to have to worry about willpower, motivation, mindset, because I've just changed the rules.
Yeah, that is so well said, Kathy. And let me just say right now to all of you, I have to work on this all the time, personally. So I lost 55 pounds eating this way. I reversed some numbers that were creeping up. They came back down. They're nice and good now. So I have been where you are, and there is no end to this journey. That's the thing. It's like a blessing and a curse. as you're going along, when you have stumbles and you fall down, I don't want you to be thinking like, well, I'm never going to get to the end now. Like, I'm just, I keep making mistakes. I'm never going to get there. There is no there. There is no there. Maybe there is a goal weight that you want to arrive at. But even once you're there, the journey continues because you're still alive and you still are going to have some control over what you put in your mouth if you want to maintain your results. And so, yeah, I have really hard days. I have days that I am totally knocked off my footing completely. And I like just, it's terrible. I have days like that. Even still, even after I lost my weight and I've been able to maintain it and all of that. So yes, please don't think that if you stumble on this journey that disqualifies you in some way or you're not going to make it, because all of us are just people who are stumbling our way to the finish line. And the difference between the people who make it there and the people who don't is the people who make it there get back up when they fall. The people who don't make it give up or they just stay on the ground too long. That, in my experience, as I observe who is successful and who is not, the people who can get up the quickest are the ones who have the most success.
That's huge. That's super huge. And I think that's important for everyone to know. So I'm going to, Ellen Shapiro says, yes, love yourself. This is very difficult. I'm trying to affirm that I'm strong and healthy, that I'm getting healthy labs and losing weight easily instead of all the negative messages. And I mean, as mostly women, Ryan, I know that you're there, so you get included with all of us ladies a lot of times. But and this also happens with a portion of the male population as well, where we tend towards self-doubt. We tend towards not feeling maybe so. I'm trying to think of a good word, but just like kind. We're not very kind to ourselves for whatever reason it is, and we have to learn how to do that. And so I think all of this is really, really helpful. So we have a couple of other questions. So Moni is saying, any tips for someone who eats when lonely, bored, obviously things not out of hunger? I've been fully compliant on the Starch solution for months, but I'm having difficulty losing because I eat too much.
I eat too much. I'm always skeptical about that. Because, Moni, if you're eating too much of the right things, then you should be okay. But if you're eating too much and it comes in the form of high calorie density foods, which it usually is for most of us, especially when we're eating around those things you mentioned, not hunger, angry, bored, tired, all those feelings, then yeah, usually you're going for like the granola bars and the chips and things like that. So, honestly, I have to share this. For me, when I lost the last, bulk of my weight that I needed to lose, I did it relatively quickly. It felt really quick, especially considering my first 25 pounds took me so many years just because I just wasn't doing it right. I didn't understand fully the principles of calorie density. I just struggled and I was up and down a lot. So that's why that part of my journey took forever. But the last, 30 pounds of my weight loss happened in the course of essentially, like a spring and summer. So maybe like 5 months or something, which for me, that was like really quick weight loss.
Wow, that is quick.
Yeah. And the reason was because I was very busy and very happy because I was doing things and experiencing things that I loved and enjoyed. And so I wasn't looking to food to comfort me. For one thing, I didn't feel like I needed comforting. And for another, I just didn't have time to feel my discomfort. I mean, I was just busy. So this is going to sound like just kind of lame advice, but I tell people all the time, get busy doing something you love. Don't let this be the center of your universe. I think that's what happens a lot of times with a lot of us, especially those of us who are on YouTube listening to the different speakers and things like that. We can get sort of consumed. This can become everything. And you get tunnel vision. Everything is about food. Food is everything. Everything is food. And I would encourage you, hey, what haven't you done in years? Like, when was the last time you felt truly free or truly happy? And if you haven't felt truly happy in a while, like, I get it. I think that's a lot of people, right? That's a lot of us. But what is something that you could do, that you could get involved in, that would fill up some of your time so that you're not so consumed by just this part of your life, you know? So, um, so there's that. What was the original question? I'm sorry. I know I got way off from it.
Oh no, I think you're doing great. I'm trying to remember what the
Okay.
original question is too. Oh, was it
Sorry.
tips for someone who eats when lonely and bored, right? Or did
Oh,
I
yeah.
go? Okay,
Yes.
but
Thank
I
you. Look,
may I?
I was on track.
You know, you totally
I was,
were. You
I
always
was getting
are.
there.
But and I want to kind of say to what you were saying about, you know, do something enjoyable, because personally, I've been a little bit burnout. Cheryl is having some burnout. And one of the things, like last week, I know a lot of you know, because I didn't even go live last week, is I did a pseudo retreat at home, meaning I only worked for like 3 or 4 hours a day. But like we did just the most basic things. Like we went to Raleigh, which is a half an hour away, and we went to the farmer's market, which is always open, and a garden store we like, and walked around some small places. And I know that I often discount the weight of goodness that some little things can have. Like if I walk that way to the big houses, the fancier part of our neighborhood, there's an entrance to a state park, and we can walk down and we can see the Eno River. And it's not a giant walk. It's not even 3 miles. But sometimes we don't take the time to do it. And when we take the time to do it, it makes a difference, not just right then, but later. So thank you for that, Stacy.
That is so great, Kathy. That's such a great point. We get to choose about which direction we're going. Are we looking towards the things that we don't have and we're dissatisfied about, or comparing ourselves to others, or our journey to other people's journeys? Or are we looking at all the wonderful gifts and beautiful blessings in our life, and all the things there are to live for, and all the things we enjoy? So, yeah, a lot of times, just like someone said, I wish I could remember who it was, it is often your mindset. The way that you think about things changes how you feel.
I think that makes so much sense. And can we've got about 15-ish, 18-ish minutes
Yeah.
left. So can we
Okay.
change again, or do you need to finish
Of
up something
course.
about this?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. We've got some general questions that are going to go to general starch solution versus maximum weight loss. No, not necessarily
Oh,
versus, but like, so, because there's the maximum weight loss question later. So TS says, what's the difference between the regular starch solution and the maximum weight loss? Because people hear those. And TS says, Kathy, you mentioned that you started on the regular one and not the maximum or the mini. And that is thanks to Stacy.
yeah. I will give you guys my little spiel about that. So, I feel that this is a long journey for most of us. The journey of weight loss or getting our health goals in order can be a long journey. For most people, it's at least 6 months. Usually it's years long. Okay. So, I do not desire to restrict you in any way that is unnecessary for any part of that journey. And so, what I explained to Kathy when she first came in and went through the McDougall program is I said, hey, because of the amount of weight that you still have left to lose, I'm going to theorize that I don't need to yank everything away right now. The yanking away usually comes towards the end, the last 20 pounds, but especially the last 5 to 10 pounds. And that's a tough time because we're eating very close to almost exclusively maximum weight loss at that point, and I'll explain in a second what that is. But when you have, let's say, 30, 40, 50 plus pounds to lose, you probably can eat the regular McDougall program. I'll explain what that is in a second, and still continue to lose weight as long as you're sticking pretty faithfully to the regular McDougall program. So the regular McDougall program is a starch-centered diet consisting of starches, fruits, and vegetables. You're eliminating animal products, and you're eliminating or limiting as much as possible free oils. Free oils as opposed to fats in whole foods. Let me explain the difference. Free oils are things like when there is olive oil added to a marinara sauce, or there's oil added to chips when they're cooked and fried and sold to us in the grocery store, okay? That's what free oils are. They're taking oil that's been extracted from a whole food and they're using it in the cooking process of something else, okay? So the oil in chips, the oil in cakes, the oil in popcorn at the movie theater, those types of things, as opposed to fats in foods. This is a very important distinction. I have people who come through the program and have done the whole 12-day program and still are confused about this. So oils, fats that are in foods, like olives are naturally higher in fat foods. Edamame beans or soybeans are naturally higher in fat. There's all kinds of things like nuts and seeds, avocados, those types of things have fat. So an avocado, a whole avocado has fat in it. Yes, you can extract just the fat, just the oil, and then you have avocado oil, but you've taken away the fiber, most of the vitamins and nutrients and all of the fiber. And so you have that avocado oil now, and you're just dumping that into the bloodstream. Incredibly easy for your body to store as fat. So, and it's just very calorie dense. So you're consuming a bunch of extra calories when you consume oil. They also have shown scientifically that oil does seem to contribute to inflammation, endothelial inflammation. And so there are lots of reasons to avoid free oils, but fats in whole plant foods are safe. Eating an avocado is safe. However, some of these higher fat plant foods are higher in calorie density, more delicious, and they're easier to overeat. And so that's why Dr. McDougall emphasizes a low-fat, starch-centered, whole foods, plant-based diet with no animal products and no oil, okay? Now, that's the regular McDougall program. It includes things that are made with whole plant foods, like bread, whole grain bread. It includes muffins and things like that are made with flour that is maybe perfectly, healthy flours that are just, whole wheat that's been ground down into a flour. So those types of things are included in the regular McDougall plan, okay? When you choose to do maximum weight loss, you're really sticking with fruits, vegetables, and those water-rich, whole-cooked starches. That would be things like potatoes, rice, beans, corn, quinoa, barley, farro, and a more processed starch, which is pasta. Some people avoid it during weight loss because it's just very easy for some people to overeat. I am one of those people, okay? I can eat just tons of pasta, whereas I can't necessarily eat tons of potatoes. I can eat a lot of potatoes, but not as much potato as I can pasta. Pasta is just very, very palatable to me and very enjoyable, and I can overeat it very easily. So knowing myself, I try to steer clear of it during the weight loss phase. During maintenance, I can eat pasta and maintain my weight, no problem at all, okay? Maximum weight loss also basically completely eliminates nuts and nut butters. Whereas the regular McDougall plan says things like, just limit it. We don't want to create a weight problem in somebody who doesn't already have a weight problem. You know what I mean? By eating a bunch of nuts and seeds and nut butters. So that's kind of the difference between the two. And I feel like, yes, most people in their weight loss journey get to a point where they need to be leaning much more maximum weight loss than the regular McDougall diet, just because of calorie density. That's a whole different thing. Calorie density, go watch Jeff Novick's talk on calorie density on YouTube. It's like 9 years old, but it is classic. It's gold. That will help you understand how to use the principles of calorie density to your benefit while you're trying to lose weight.
That makes perfect sense. You explained it so well. And I just want to
Thanks.
reiterate because Jack Baby says, so the Starch Solution book is the regular program. When we say the regular McDougall program or the Starch Solution, right? It's the book, the Starch Solution.
The Starch Solution book basically lays the entire foundation and case for why this diet is the diet for humans. And it does describe the regular McDougall plan diet, right? There is a section in there that talks about maximum weight loss. So the maximum weight loss guidelines and the differences brought about with the maximum weight loss plan are also outlined in the Starch Solution book. And let me just tell you guys one last thing about this. So when it comes to like, should I do maximum weight loss? Should I do Starch Solution? Should I do Mary's Mini? Again, those are all, I think I've mentioned this before when we've talked, those are all tools that you have at your disposal at any time. So I gave this analogy one of these times that I appeared on the show, and I got so much feedback about it, and so many people loved it that I'm going to actually go ahead and repeat it because I think people liked it. So what it is that people think of maximum weight loss, Mary's Mini, and the regular McDougall diet as three different houses. And you go in one, you open the door, you go in, you close the door, and you're in that house. So you're either on maximum weight loss, or you're on the Starch Solution, or you're on Mary's Mini. Okay. But what I say is it's more like one giant house, and these are each rooms. And you can go into the room and come out of the room as needed and use it to your advantage at any given time for whatever you're trying to do. So I'll give you an example. For me, I mostly, even in maintenance, I mostly eat maximum weight loss, like the majority of the time. However, if I go out to eat or I'm on vacation or I'm at a birthday party or anything like that, I'll just do the regular McDougall diet. I will eat bread and tortillas and what else? Nut butters and, muffins and things like that when I'm in a social situation that maximum weight loss is difficult for me to maintain. So I use them all like tools. I don't have to be, it's not black and white. You don't owe this to anyone. No one's holding you to, oh, you have to do maximum weight loss 100% of the time. It's very difficult to maintain that 100% of the time. So you use those tools as you wish to get the results that you're looking for.
This is great. We're getting some good feedback. TS says, thank you. Fantastic explanation. Karen Hicks says, thank you for the explanation. God, I can't say anything today. And Karen, the other question was coming from Karen, which says, I'm using the Maximum Weight Loss book, and it states to avoid tofu and tempeh until you hit your goal, and then you can add it back. Is that still correct?
Yes. Now, remember though, Karen, that is a guideline. You get to decide if that guideline is something that you want to follow strictly or not. It's entirely up to you. You get to decide. The guideline, though, is based on the fact that tofu and tempeh are higher fat plant foods. So for some people, they can be tempting to overconsume. They also can slow your results a little bit from a health perspective. Some of your numbers and things like, and for some people, they can slow weight loss. But the bigger issue is that they're not starches. So that's a little bit difficult to understand, is that Dr. McDougall's claim, and what we see backed by science, is that starches are the most satiating, most filling foods on the planet. So we want your starches to be the center of your diet. When you're trying to use tofu or tempeh as like your main thing, almost as if it was a starch, what you'll find is that even though they may be really good and they may be filling for a lot of people, by and large, they're not classified as starches, and so they don't sustain you as well or as long as the starches. Now, you are an individual, you are a different person. If you're very, very satisfied by tofu and you don't find that it's slowing your weight loss, or you're happy with the rate of your weight loss, then more power to you. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that for most people, it's not, you can't have it at the center of your diet or in any like major, quantity of your foods in the form of tofu and tempeh, and lose weight necessarily at a great rate. But you are your own best, you're your only experiment, and you're your best chance to find out about what will work for you. So why not try it out and see what happens?
I love all the things you said. And there's so much stuff going on in the comments too. I just wanted to offer, so like, I think I said we had grits and tofu scramble. It's actually, I make a slow cooker of like, I don't know if you can, let's see if I can, if this thing, like a little, oh baby, just a little baby slow cooker. So I'll put the grits on in the morning, but like, I'll make 1 cup of grits, I make 1 thing of tofu. We eat half of the tofu, not half each, but half of what's in that container. 1 serving for me, 1 serving for her, and then we had 2 leftover servings from the weekend that we ate this morning. And so I think sometimes, like what you're saying is like, it reminds me of the old meat thinking, where meat was the biggest thing on your plate, and there was like a little potato and some little vegetables. And it's almost like with tofu and tempeh, I think about it. So like, I'll put it in a stir fry. So like when you see meat in a vegetable stir fry, there's not a lot of it, right? It's not like you're putting 2 big things of 2 pounds of tofu in there. Maybe you're even putting half a block of tofu in there. So I don't know if that has any differences with how you feel about it. And I'm certainly not trying to say that makes it okay for maximum weight loss or anything, but I think there is the temptation to just put a Beyond Burger on the plate or Impossible meatloaf on the plate. And so I just wanted to kind of point out that that could be some other programming coming in as well.
I'm so glad you said that. I think that's true, that people are feeling like, well, they're still missing the meat, and they're like, well, what's a really high protein plant food I can put on there? And they think tofu or tempeh, because even a lot of times the recipe sites and stuff like that will suggest that, like the center of your meal, because it is a great transition option. And I will tell you honestly, you guys know I work with hundreds of people through the McDougall program. Tiffany might tell you differently, but for me, I don't think any of my patients couldn't lose weight because they were consuming some tofu or tempeh. That just hasn't ever been the issue. Have I had to talk to people about like, oh, maybe scale back on the tofu or tempeh and see if that makes a difference? I have. Yes, I've had that conversation a handful of times out of hundreds of people. But it's usually not the issue. Usually it's very calorie dense things, because tofu is, depending on how much of the water you pull out of it, it can be anywhere from like, I think it's like 350 calories per pound for like the super wet tofu, like silken or whatever, all the way up to, it can be super calorie dense if you dry it out or you fry it, or, even air frying, that kind of thing. So it's okay from a calorie density standpoint. That's not the issue with it. And so I usually tell people, hey, if you love it, you just really love it, and you just have to have it, why not have it and see what happens? If you're not happy with your weight loss, it could be something to consider scaling back on.
And you've talked about that before too, just each individual thing. And what I say this every time, but what I love is the way that you're looking at people as individuals, because different people are going to feel different ways. Like even as I said the meatloaf thing, I was like, well, I make a bean loaf. And I'm like, but here, I'll have to go back to where people can see me too. So we have these big plates. Let me see if I can even find it. Cheryl loves these. They're pasta balls. And so when we serve meatloaf, I cover the bottom of this with compliant mashed potatoes. So it is a lot of mashed potatoes. And then I've got a little loaf pan and I've got a little slice of our lentil grain loaf, and I put that on top. And to me, that's the exact opposite of what I grew up with, where maybe there was 2 or 3 pieces of meatloaf and a little half cup of potatoes and vegetables too.
Yes, very good.
Okay, a couple more questions. So going back to the houses, is Mary's Mini just another room in that house, but with less choices? Well, she was talking about each one of those, like Mary's Mini is a house. It's like a little compound. It's the McDougall Starch compound. And there's Mary's Mini, maximum weight loss, and the regular starch solution, correct? For houses.
Well, what I'm saying is they're not individual houses. They're all rooms in one house
Got
that you can come in and out of at any given time. Mary's Mini, so guys, here's the deal. Mary's Mini is fantastic for certain situations, certain circumstances, but Mary's Mini is not the way that I would encourage any of my patients to aspire to eat long term. I think when it was written, it was intended to be a short-term thing to address a few issues. One, people who are just like, way off track and just want to kind of reset their taste buds and just simplify. People who are overwhelmed and want to simplify. People who are busy, like they're about to be very busy. It's very easy to just cook a pot of potatoes and steam some green beans and call it a day. So it's good for basically getting back to simple basics. But I do really believe in its short-term use. Some people, I know you guys have done a 10-day here, and I've heard of other people doing a 10-day challenge on Mary's Mini. That's fine. I usually like to, if I ever encourage somebody to do it, I usually tell them 3 to 5 days. That's just my opinion about how long you should do a Mary's Mini to accomplish the specific goals that people are usually trying to accomplish by doing the mini. And
I
then
love
go back
that.
to the regular, or maximum
And
weight loss.
the reason I'm sorry, I got super excited about that because
okay.
Our experience in Kathy's Cooking Club when we did it, literally about 5 days in, people started having some issues. And they weren't big issues. So the people who chose potatoes really missed their oatmeal in the morning. Because the Mary's Mini, for those of you who may not know, you pick one starch and you eat it for all of your meals for a period of time. So I think from what I observed with our people, I think 5 days is the perfect day because it was such an interesting experience because we were talking in Zoom and so many people had the same experience. And Cheryl was at 5 days, she's like, I just can't do potatoes anymore. I have to do rice. And so a lot of people switched their starch at 5 days. So
yeah. Can I say one more quick thing about Mary's Mini? And by the way, we'll just go when you need to because I'm good. I can hang out for a little bit longer. So you just let me know. But okay, just real quickly on the Mary's Mini thing. Dr. McDougall said this one time, and I just can't get over it. I think it was so spot on. He was talking to us about Mary's Mini. You can tell that he has some trepidation about recommending it, and I'm like him. I very rarely tell people, yeah, do the Mary's Mini. The reason is because a lot of the time, the majority of the people that we get that want to do Mary's Mini, the reason why they connect to the concept so much is because they feel over years and decades of dieting that they must suffer in order to make gains. If I'm not suffering or if I'm not sad and crying into my mashed potatoes, then how will I lose weight? And that sounds so silly and ridiculous when I say it. But how many of us subconsciously feel that way? Unless I'm restricting or suffering or crying into my mashed potatoes, how in the world will I lose weight? And Kathy, I would love for you to speak to this again, because you and Cheryl are one of those that were like so flabbergasted that you were not suffering and you were still losing weight. You were like, what? How am I losing weight? I'm not suffering at all.
It's very, very true. And I think, again, we talked earlier, for those of you who may have just come in later, we were talking about kind of talking kindly to yourself instead of saying, do this, you lazy slob. Like, which is how my inner voice talks, which is why I try to be nice to y'all, because, not nice Kathy is not nice. You can ask Cheryl. But, Stacy was saying, we want to do this to be healthier, because I love you. Talking to yourself like that. And that makes me, that lets me know I have a little more therapy to do, really, is what happens. But I think that from my past, and Cheryl did Weight Watchers and all this different stuff. And I think when you end up doing these different kinds of programs, for some people, obviously everything works for somebody. But I think that it does put you on this alert, like, oh, I need to be restricting. I can only have X amount of calories. So let's say I had that donut I had. So maybe that took most of my Watcher points. So I know I can only have salad for 2 more meals. That kind, and I know that affected Cheryl a lot. And that when we ate the regular Starch solution, and I was trying to woo Cheryl over to the Starch solution side. So we had mashed potatoes, and I made some country air fried tofu and oil-free gravy, and different things like we still didn't eat a whole pack of tofu, the same thing as we talked about. But Cheryl ate better for that. I worked so hard. I really worked very hard, but I made her all of her favorites. We had like a cauliflower steak, like chicken parmesan substitute and things like that. And you don't have to work that hard. I did because I really wanted Cheryl to join in, and 4 days later I cooked her into it a little bit. But I think that people think, they either see people doing the maximum weight loss, or they see the bowl with the line and the half, and they think about being restricted and being the things that you can't have. But on the regular Starch solution, there's so few things that you can't have. Like you can't have oil, and I don't know about you, but I don't miss drinking oil or eating oil at all. And now they're like, Starbucks has put it in coffee, and that freaks me out. And like coconut, right? And there's not a lot of just absolute no's. Like the list of no's is really short. So I feel like there's not much I can't make vegan, whole food, plant-based, no oil. There really isn't. And if you just prepare a little bit ahead, and sometimes that's not possible, but if you have a slow cooker, and if you don't have a slow cooker, you probably have an Instant Pot. You can get one for $5 or $10 at the thrift store. And you can even throw frozen vegetables in there, leftover rice or quinoa or can of beans, and you have a meal. So if you don't have any energy, you can do it. If you have more energy, you can do something fancier, if that's something you like, right? I don't know how you feel about that. Is that what you were hoping that I was going to come out with?
Yes, I love it.
Okay.
It's so interesting because obviously I get people who have eaten this way for a while, but I also get some people who the day before the program begins, they're eating like a bacon double cheeseburger, like the day before, and these folks are coming straight from the standard American diet. And so let's remember that when that's the case, when that's what you've been eating, cheese and dairy and eggs and meat and things like that, the list of no's can feel very long, Kathy. Like
That's
to us,
true. That's
right? To
true. I'm
those of
sorry.
us
And
who
I don't mean to
know,
discount anybody who's watching who feels that way at all either. So my
right?
apologies.
No, 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 no. I think what you said was 100% spot on. But here's what I want to say to the people who do feel like the list of no's is very long. you got to change the way you talk to yourself about the choice that you're making. Because if you are telling yourself, I can't have meat, I can't have dairy, I can't have eggs, I can't have fried food, now I can't have oil, what? I can't have any of these things. I can't have chocolate chip cookies. I can't. The truth of the matter is you can. You always have the choice. You always have the choice. I don't care who you are. If you've been eating plant-based for 5 minutes or 5 years or 5 decades, you can go out and get a burger if you want to, because you don't owe this to anyone except yourself. Okay? I know that many of us do this, and over time it becomes about the planet and other people and all of that, and that's in the animals, and that is all beautiful and wonderful, but at the end of the day, you're not going to jail if you break your plan of not eating animal products, right? You always have a choice. And so when you're thinking about the long, feeling like the list of no's is very, very long, I want you to remind yourself, nobody's putting this on me. I don't owe this to anyone. I get to choose. And I am choosing all of these wonderful yeses. And I'm not choosing the no's for my health, for my heart, for my family, to be here for my grandkids, whatever your why is. It's your choice always. So just be careful about how you're talking to yourself. The reality is, if I went out onto the street right now and plucked some random person and brought them in here to talk to you all and said, what's your diet like? And they're like, I eat nothing but pancakes all day. Or I eat pancakes and then I eat fried chicken. And that's what I eat. Okay, they chose that. There are ramifications on both sides to the choices that they're making, just like your choices. So many of us get in this mindset of like, I'm a victim because I've always been overweight. So, I don't get as many choices as everybody else does because I've had to control my weight. I'm saying that as someone who has felt and thought those things. Okay, so I get it. But the reality is that person off the street who came in here and told us they eat nothing but fried chicken and pancakes, they have every bit as much of a free choice as you do. And they are paying the price on both sides. One, they may be in the pleasure trap, just having a good old time, party, party, party all the time. Good for them. What does their body feel like? What are their biometric numbers looking like? What's their cholesterol level? How long will they live? What kind of quality of life will they have? There's always a price to any choice that we make, but you always have a choice.
That's really important. And one of the things that I forget, because it is for me going from just being vegan or whole food plant-based, I know from vegan to whole food plant-based no oil is a much bigger leap than whole food plant-based to whole food plant-based no oil. And it can feel a lot like things get put on you. So I love the way you were explaining that for sure. And it does put the control on you. And I think we've talked about this when Cheryl was on. And I'm sorry, Cheryl is in a class. That's why she's not here. Is that for a while, Cheryl would kind of say, oh, I'm going to be vegetarian. Oh, I'm going to be this. I'm like, okay, you do whatever you need to do. But you don't want me to cook meat for you because I became a vegetarian when I learned how to cook. I'll kill somebody. And so she went through like a month of paleo with her George Foreman grill that I bought her. And that was about all the cooking she wanted to do. But when we were working with Howard Jacobson, we had gone to a retreat with some people. And she was like, yeah, I've been vegan now for a year. And they're like, yeah, Kathy really just finally got to you. And I was super offended because that took that power right out of her hands and put it right into mine where it never belonged, or even it wasn't because of me. It was because of Josh LaJohn. He said something that hit her the right way that made her feel okay about that. But there is something incredibly powerful about owning your own choices for good or for bad. So thank you for that. Um, let's see, there was a neuropathy question. Like, do you work with anybody who maybe has neuropathy? She's wondering if this kind of diet, here we go. Delia said eating this way has stopped most of the neuropathy in her feet. And I'm trying, oh, here we go. It's Sherry. Can you get off your pills for neuropathy if you eat this way? Please help. No one talks about this, is what the question is.
Yeah, it depends entirely on your body. Some neuropathy, unfortunately, is not reversible, but we will not know unless you eat this way and you run the experiment. Now, the thing you have to keep in mind, Sherry, though, is that you need to run a clean experiment. I talk to my patients about this all the time. We only can truly know what your body will do in the way of disease reversal and symptom reversal and neuropathy reversal if you run the clean experiment and you actually follow the diet. So what that looks like is not, eating the diet for 3 days and then hanging out at Burger King for like 4 days. You know what I mean? You probably know that, but that's what's difficult is we do have people who contact us and say it's not working. And sometimes they're doing everything right and it's not working, and it's like, bummer. For whatever reason, your nerves just didn't bounce back. But we have people who contact us and say it's not working, and then you dig into what they've been doing and it's like they're really following the diet like 4 days a week and then kind of eating whatever for 3 days a week. You will not know truly what your results could have been or should have been unless you stick with it day after day after day. But let's see. Sherry, let's see. Run the experiment. You're worth it. And let's just see if you see any improvement.
I love that. And I think it is important to remember, because I think sometimes those 3 days you were on it seem like such a long time. And Cheryl definitely has that mindset. She used to be like, I was vegetarian last week. And this was years and years ago. And I'd be like, you mean you had a Beyond Burger once last week? And so like she makes that into every choice she made. And I think it's the human brain can trick us a lot.
Yes. That's where logging your food, keeping track of what you're eating can be helpful. You don't need to do it in a way like, I know some of the diet programs that are out there, tracking is such a big deal. But if you're looking for symptom reversal, or if you're trying to understand if certain foods affect your symptoms more than others, keeping a food log, just a simple food log. You don't need to weigh and measure your food when you're eating the McDougall diet, but just keeping, hey, I ate oatmeal with blueberries for breakfast and I ate soup with toast for lunch or whatever, so that when you are symptomatic or you're seeing that you're having more neuropathy or you're having swelling or something like that, you can go back and go, whew, I see a theme. Every time that I was dealing with the tingles, it was because I was eating bakery bread. Maybe there's something in the bread that your body just doesn't agree with and becomes inflamed by. So, that's really useful in those types of situations.
That's a great point. And isn't that a similar thing that you do if you're like trying to, do a food elimination to decide if something's bothering you, right? So it's
Yes.
a tool.
Right. Real quickly, let me just say, if you have an inflammatory condition or a chronic pain condition or chronic fatigue or something like that you think may be related to food, you're not sure which foods it's related to, and you are wanting to do an elimination diet, you can do that on your own. There are a million different elimination diet protocols you can find online. You can definitely do it. It is so much better to work with us. So if that's you and you have something going on, that's one of the things we can really help you with, is running a really good, clean elimination diet to get to the bottom of what your food sensitivities or allergies may be.
And I noticed a lot of people who were taking the program with us, some of the people were doing that at the same time, which is how I
Yes.
even know what that is. I have never done it. A couple of little food questions right now. I'll get those really quick. People in Canada are having trouble finding wraps without oil. I found a couple of things, like what I would do for you, and maybe you have an answer too, Stacy. I would look out for the red lentil wraps that people are making. It's based on an Indian recipe. They don't always say it's not fermented, but it's kind of like a dosa. If you look at my uttapam recipe, which uses urad dal, which is split lentils that are skinned with, and I use quinoa, millet, and brown rice, and then it gets fermented, and then you can make a little pancake or a little bread or make a crepe or a dosa is what it's called. But lots of creators have red lentil wraps. Red lentils aren't expensive. You just need a blender and a pan. Raw Food Romance has these wraps that you dehydrate, which are kind of interesting, and they're mostly vegetables. I believe there's some flaxseed in there as well. I have the things to make them in my Breville, and I probably will be making them during the bundle, because I think her wrap, I'll find out. She did the wrap book. I'm hoping it's in the bundle. But so I'm going to make some of those. But there's a lot of different little things you can do like that if you can't
That's
find
exactly what I would suggest, is making them, doing the red lentil thing that, like you said, is based on the Indian recipe. It's age old. They've been doing it forever. And it's fantastic. Also, a great option for people who are gluten-free.
Exactly. And I find too, like if you do a dosa or uttapam batter, which sounds really complicated, but literally I just soak stuff in the blender. I blend it up and I put it in my Instant Pot on the yogurt setting. So like it sounds like a lot of work, it's a lot of hands-off time, but sometimes I notice with the fermentation, it helps my tummy a little bit sometimes, but that could just be me too. But there are some, like I know the little almond tortillas that are small don't have oil. The burrito size do have oil. And
just remember though that when you're making things with almonds or cashews, that they're going to be much, much more calorie dense than something like lentils, because they'll be higher in fat.
absolutely. So like we don't use them very often, but like I haven't really seen a good flour gluten-free, even small tortilla where I am that's not made with almonds that doesn't have oil in it. So it's like, but like again, you can make these wraps, which would be significantly cheaper too, because all that pre-made food is going up really high. TS was saying that they're trying to prep more potatoes. They're cooking plain sweet potatoes whole in a slow cooker on low for 6 hours, which is great. And asking, can you do the same for russets? Absolutely. So I sometimes batch slow cook, because that's great, because you can just wash them, poke some holes in them, go to bed, and then in the morning if you want to eat one, it's there. You can also do them in the Instant Pot if you want to, like if I woke up and I'm like, I really want a potato, that's a really fast way to get a potato too. And sorry for all that. We're getting food. I'm sure there's going to be no food comments after this, but it said, do I know of a creamer for tea or coffee without oil? I don't know of a store-bought one, but I have a whole bunch of recipes. And honestly, the difference if you're making your own homemade oat milk, soy milk, rice milk, nut milk, any of that, you can make it from skim to creamer. It's the ratio of water to thing. So when I make Ninja Creamy Pints, I call it oat cream. It's probably more like oat whole milk. So I use, I use a little bit more oats to make that work. So another thing you can do is take whatever regular non-dairy milk you're using, and you can mix some ground, and I would grind the chia seeds fresh. And don't put too much or it's going to start tasting weird. It'll taste kind of fishy, but you can maybe try putting, I don't know, maybe a pint, between 1/4 and 1/2 teaspoon of that, and mixing it together. That will help it get thick. Xanthan gum, if you use it for some other things, you could put a little bit of that in there if you're just looking for the thickness. If you go to healthyslowcooking.com, I have a few different creamer recipes made with different things. But if there's, and on here, I have a lavender creamer and a butter pecan creamer. And so if you're avoiding nuts, the butter pecan is probably not for you. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Oh, it's like food day. We're here with Stacy. Why are y'all asking all these food questions? But can cornstarch be used instead of tapioca in stretchable cheese? Sometimes. So if you, kind of depends on the recipe, you can experiment with it. Tapioca will give a better stretch if you're making like a no-fat mozzarella kind of cheese or a queso. And I don't know what that is. Okay. Oh, Apple's saying, listening to hours and hours of Tara Brock and Sharon Salzberg has shifted my self-talk to much more loving dialogue. And I think that that's awesome. Other people are saying, Sherry's saying, my family and friends don't eat this way. And I think there can be an isolation in this. And it can be harder to go out to eat, or you have to pay. It's not impossible, but you can't always let everybody else pick where you're going. Do you want to talk about maybe how you can advocate for yourself in a situation like that, or create a safer space where you can either go out to friends or make it where you can bring things to your friends and family's house?
Sure. So I'll just tell you how I do it. So whenever I'm trying to figure out where to eat with somebody, I give them options. I say, what if we go to Flower Child? Or what if we go to Casa de Luz? Or what if we go to Bolden Creek? So if anybody here is from Austin, they'll recognize all three of those wonderful places. And there's stuff that we can get at all three of those places. But the thing that I usually suggest more than anything else is Asian restaurants. For me, it's just very easy. Anytime I land at an Asian restaurant, I've never been to an Asian restaurant where I couldn't get steamed rice and steamed vegetables. And so you have to just advocate for yourself. Now, have there been times that people have come back and gone, I don't want to go to any of those places? Yes, there have. And you still have options then. You don't have to say, well, too bad, you're going to one of my places. No, you can still, be an agreeable person to a degree and say that you'll go to one of those places and maybe look up the menus. I do that all the time. When people come with their suggestions, I look up the menu. Is there anything on here that will be within the realm of what I want to be eating? And if I can find something, even if it's something small that's on like the appetizer, like, steamed edamame or something like that, then I go, okay, I can eat before I go. I can have that. I have something to order so that I don't feel weird, but it's fine even if you don't order something. It's up to you. And then I can eat afterwards too. It's never an emergency, okay? This is one thing we all need to remember, is that in our case, thank goodness, hunger is not an emergency. We're going to be okay if we're a little bit hungry when we leave the restaurant. That was very difficult for me to accept. I still get real twitchy when I leave a restaurant hungry. Number one, I'm usually mad about it because I probably just paid $20 for something that was not filling, and that makes me very mad. But number two, I really don't like being hungry. It's a very uncomfortable sensation for me, and I've had to do a lot of talking myself off the ledge about it. You may have to do that too. Just, hey, it's okay. You can be uncomfortable. Oh, let me share something. Do we have a minute that I could share a quick little story?
We
had
have
story
all the
time at the end last time.
Do you want to answer one question or go straight to story time?
Yes, and then we can go back to story time. Okay. But let me write down what my story was going to be.
Please do. Because, and I'll just read about these because we have two kind of weight loss questions, and one person has been following us a lot, so I wanted to address that. Sherry is saying, who's been asking some questions throughout the day. I lost 50 pounds, then Christmas came along and I gained it all back. And now I'm starting again and I'm so disappointed in myself. So that's one. I suspect some of the information may be similar. Raven, who remember was having kind of a hard time, that's who we were talking about. She couldn't get a surgery until she lost a certain amount of weight. Okay. Says, my weight loss has hit a plateau already. Should I cut out the big proteins, beans, and soy curls, and 2 tablespoons of sauces? Again, that is pretty much all I added back after the Mary's Mini that she did. So she went straight into, so when we did the Mary's Mini and Kathy's Cooking Club, that's when she kind of started doing the starch solution type eating, I believe. And Raven, please write in and correct any of this. But I was just wondering, so both of them, one's gained the weight back, one has a plateau. I was thinking how they meet in the middle is both is frustrating, for sure.
Yes, yes. I so feel for both of you, and I'm just very sorry. Sherry, gaining the weight back is the worst. I have done that. It is so hard. And it is so hard not to then just belittle and downplay every single success you have from there on out. I remember I had gained some weight back and then I went to go to lose it again. And every time I would lose a pound, I would say to myself, well, that doesn't count because you had already lost that. This is just, you're doing it again. And I look back now and I'm like, that was so mean because every pound that you lose should count, whether you've had to lose it once or 50 times. Okay. So what I would encourage you to do, Sherry, is let your journey be brand new. Just clean slate. It's a new day. You get to have a brand new journey. Let the past be the past. There is nothing you can do about it. And you certainly will gain nothing by talking meanly to yourself about it. Okay. So just let this be a brand new journey. And I would say, enjoy the journey. It is an enjoyable journey. I look back on my weight loss and think, gosh, I was so frustrated all the time. But when I look back on it, I'm like, that was a beautiful and kind of fun process, and I got to feel so proud of myself so many times along the way. So do your best to let the past be in the past, let it go, and just one day at a time, just like you did it the first time. And then make sure that you have really excellent support at the end of your weight loss journey, because then the next chapter begins. You're not at the end. It's the next chapter, which is maintenance, which for many people is just as difficult, if not more so, than the weight loss itself. So you need to have good support when that time comes. Okay, so that's what I would say about that. The plateau, listen, I would honestly, it's very difficult for me to speak to what you need to do differently because I don't know you. I wish I did. I don't know you. I don't know what you've been eating so far. I don't know how much you weigh, how tall you are, how active you are. I mean, there's so many factors that go into why you're finding yourself in a plateau right now. But no, you do not remove beans. You do not remove like foods that are healthy that we know are health promoting. You do not need to do that.
Would you say, just because she said the protein she mentioned, beans, which I absolutely thought you were going to say what you just said, soy curls, which are a little more processed, even though they are whole soybeans. Do you feel like that maybe should be moved out, or do you feel like it should be experimented with?
I would experiment with it. The issue with soy curls oftentimes is not necessarily that they're made out of soybeans. It's that usually when we're using them, a lot of times it's because they're trying to like mimic, I'm not saying that she's doing this, but a lot of people are trying to mimic sort of the texture of meat. And so they dry, it's a very dry soy product. And so the drier something is, the more calorie dense it is. So it may just be that that's a little too calorie dense for you to consume at this point in your weight loss efforts. Okay. So yes, the soy curls are something to consider scaling back on for now. You can reintroduce them later on when you're maintaining your weight, but for now, they may not be a weight loss food for you. But also, just looking at your overall calorie density of your food. And the name of the game when it comes to a plateau is you don't eat less, you eat more strategically. So you are looking for strategic little ways that you can lower your overall calorie density of your food without eating less or going hungry.
That totally makes sense. Sorry for the big pause. I clicked
It's
my
okay.
unmute button like 7 times. Um, and Raven, if you want to email me too, and give me some of that information that I don't think you should put in the comments for the rest of the world to have. Um, I'll see what information I can pass on to Stacy too.
Sure.
There are a couple more things, of course, because you have a story now. So one person wants to know, did you lose your last 30 pounds, Stacy, using the maximum weight loss?
I did, but I did not set out to do that. I did not tell myself you can only eat maximum weight loss. The way that it happened for me was actually really interesting. I understood I was already working for the McDougalls when I still wanted to lose that last 25 to 30. So I understood very well the principles of calorie density by that point. And so I knew, hey, if I want to lose weight more efficiently, I will do the principles, guidelines of maximum weight loss as often as possible. And what ended up happening was I just really got into that deep groove with it, such that I just never felt like I needed to have bread or tortillas or anything like that. Now, having said that, since then, I do eat those things sparingly. When I got to my goal weight, it's not like I could just eat all of those things all the time. No, you bring them in sparingly. But yes, during that last 25 to 30 pounds, I did have to abstain from those things for the most part. I mean, I would say almost completely. I probably had like a corn tortilla or two in there, here and there. I think I maybe had pancakes once or something, so it wasn't
Yeah.
100% maximum weight loss the whole, 5 months, but it was pretty darn near it.
Okay, and that makes sense too. I got two more things.
Mhm.
One is Raven saying, I'm still struggling to eat large amounts of food too. I eat more now than I was the first week. And I'm telling you that because I suspect you, and you can tell me if I'm right, if I'm reading Stacy's mind or not, is that usually you talk about increasing the starch. And that's what you had talked about here before. Like, so eating more starch. Would you think that might apply here or no?
Well, it depends entirely on what she's eating, because if she's eating large volumes of vegetables and salads, then yes, that may be the case. That she's overeating those non-starchy vegetables in an attempt to get rid of her hunger,
And it
when in
sounds like
reality,
she's just not hungry. So she said, and I'm going to read it again just in case I'm
okay.
misunderstanding. I am still struggling to eat large amounts of food. I eat more now than I was the first week. So to me, it sounds like she's not, possibly not eating enough food. You don't think that's okay?
I mean, it's possible that she's not eating enough food, but this whole idea that people say, oh, I'm not losing weight because I'm under eating. And so now my metabolism is shot. That's just not what happens when you look at
Okay.
people. I mean, this is a terrible example, but when you look at people who are like starving, they don't just stop starving, like you continue to burn calories every day. So if you're under eating, you will continue to lose weight. It won't be
Okay.
fun. Yeah.
Okay. And that makes sense. I'm sorry, I'm a little spacey today, so that's why I wanted to make
You're
sure.
great.
The last question we're going to take right now is, I had russet potatoes spike my triglycerides. I switched to sweet potatoes and my numbers normalized. They had asked earlier, can they eat, russet potatoes without it spiking their triglycerides?
Just remember that and it could be the case, you are attributing one food choice to, you're attributing your spike in triglycerides to a singular food change that you made. But you didn't make that change or make those choices in isolation. There are so many things that go into our numbers. Okay, so it could be that for you that made a huge difference. It could be, but I just want to be careful when somebody, I feel like this happens on the internet all the time. Somebody comes on here and is like, yeah, when I switched to sweet potatoes, my triglycerides went down. And so people are like, well, then I can never eat a regular potato. Unfortunately, I think that's human nature. That's how we react when someone shares something like that. So I just wanted to say that is fantastic that was your experience. That is not necessarily going to be the thing that solves it for everyone. It maybe is something to experiment with, but there's so much going on in our bodies that can contribute to high triglycerides, including when you're eating a totally healthy, clean diet and you are losing weight. Your triglycerides can temporarily go up because your body is releasing that fat into your bloodstream to get rid of it. And so people's triglycerides sometimes do go up temporarily while they're losing weight. And then they come down really nicely when they're finished with their weight loss process.
That is very interesting. So thank you for sharing that with us, because that's not something I would have, it's not an intuitive thing to think about, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I think we've got most of the questions now, so we would love to have story time.
Story time. This may have to just become a part of my appearances here.
Love it.
Twice in a row. It's a thing now, right? Okay, this is a quick little story. So it's kind of personal. So everybody just gather around. I'm just going to share it with this nice, intimate group of probably 2,000 people who are going to end up seeing this video. But that's okay. I am an open book. It's totally fine. So many years ago, I found myself, for what I thought was no reason at all, suddenly struggling with anxiety and some panic attacks. And it was very surprising to me. It kind of came out of nowhere. And I was really terrified by my panic attacks. And even though I sought help for them, I went and started seeing a therapist about, like, why is this happening? What can I do about it? And she was amazing. She did cognitive behavioral therapy with me, and it was very effective. And so let me just say, if you're someone who struggles with panic attacks, that might be a help to you. Might not, but it really worked for me. So one thing that started to happen was I was noticing that I was having situational anxiety, where I maybe was going somewhere where I'd had panic attacks or started to feel panicky in the past. And so I started avoiding those places. One of them was Costco. Okay. And at the time I had tiny little babies, but we had a big family and I really needed to shop at Costco. But the combination of the number of people who were there, the number of choices I had to make, how bright the lights were, how giant the fan was. I mean, it was like every aspect of Costco triggered me in my little fragile state at that time. And so I told my therapist, hey, every time I go in Costco, I start to feel really panicky. And so I just stopped going. And she's like, that's exactly the opposite of what you should do. You need to expose yourself to Costco so that you can overcome the expectation, which is enough to trigger the panic attack to begin with. And so we started talking about, how do I do exposure therapy or whatever, where I go into these situations. But one thing she taught me at that time was, she taught me, you tell yourself the worst, you go to the worst case scenario. Okay, the worst case scenario, if I walk into Costco, realistically, because all the things in my head that are like, you could die, you could pass out, how realistic is that? No, none of those are very realistic at all. Realistically, the worst case scenario is that I'm going to go into Costco, and her quote is, be horribly uncomfortable. Okay? That's what she taught me to tell myself. The worst case scenario is that I will be horribly uncomfortable for a few minutes. Can I live with that in an effort to overcome this? And it's like, yes, I must, because I don't want to start avoiding all these places that I need to go in my life, right? So the worst case scenario is I will be horribly uncomfortable. I have used that so many times since then. Thank goodness I don't have this issue anymore, but I've used it in other ways. And one of the ways that I've used it is when I've been off track with my eating. It does happen to me, okay? Like I go on vacation or whatever, and I just get off track for enough days in a row that I know it's gonna be a little painful to get back on track with my eating, because it always is when you're starting over. I tell myself, what's the worst case scenario? When you go back on plan, what is the worst that's going to happen? The worst that's going to happen is I will be horribly uncomfortable for a few days. But then I will begin to find that it's easier, more natural, and not horribly uncomfortable. I'll start to settle into it, and then I'll feel good again. This is the reality, guys. When you are going from eating a bunch of junk back to eating whole natural plant foods, you may be horribly uncomfortable for a few days. And it's because you're just not getting the amazing supercharged dopamine release that you get when you eat high calorie density foods. Your body is rewarding you for eating high calorie density foods because it goes, yay, you won't starve today. Well, none of us is going to starve today in this modern world that we all are living in right here. And so we don't need to be rewarded for eating high calorie density foods. So in the absence of that reward, that dopamine hit and the way that you feel when you get it, you may feel horribly uncomfortable for a few days, but that's the worst thing that's gonna happen. So I just wanted to share that little tidbit. Maybe that can be a little mantra for you guys. There will be some white knuckling it. There will be some gritting your teeth as you're getting on track, but you can do it. Speak back to that 5-year-old that says, I don't want to do it. I don't want to eat that. I want to eat cake. Well, I'm sorry, honey. I love you too much to let you eat cake and feel bad and not optimally, function to your optimal level in your life. I love you too much to let you do that. So that's my story.
I love it. That's a great story. It really is. And I think because when we're feeling uncomfortable and when we're doing new things, sometimes it feels like there's a magnifying glass on all of that. It makes me think of the like cartoons with the magnifying glass and the ant, and you're like, and all your systems go into panic mode. But TS was saying it's a very helpful story, good information about panicking and getting back on plan without getting mad at yourself. And I like the way the whole theme of today is kind of like be kind to yourself, partner with yourself. And what I hear you, the words I hear you using remind me that we kind of have to parent ourselves, really. And so I like that you gave this example of with your sons, but you have to do that with yourself. So people who are parents or not still have to do that parenting duty to themselves. And yes. I needed to hear that today for sure. And Delia was saying it was a great story and very timely. So thank you, as always, for sharing all the things and being so patient with all of our questions. I just love having you on. It makes me happy.
Thank you, Kathy. I love coming on with you guys, and I'm happy to answer questions. And if you guys ever want to write questions to Kathy ahead of time, so we have like a little bank of questions, that's fine too. And I always have a story. Storytelling is like my favorite thing. So I can always bring more stories that will be applicable, hopefully, to your life and your journey. And thank you all so much for your time with us. And I hope to see you next time I'm here.
And I love the idea of us ending with story time. If you love it, then let's do it, because no one's telling us what to do. We can do what we want. Right. Rebel live, right? But I just hope you have the very best time. And I hope everybody, be gentle with yourself. I'm trying to be gentle with myself. Know that I'm struggling right along with you sometimes as well. And I don't think I said this yet, but the Vegan Health Bundle is coming up. And you guys know what that means. I'm going to go live like 20 to 25 times between March 1st and March 10th. And it's going to be an extravaganza. And I may do a lot of napping during that period of time too. But get ready to meet some new friends and old friends coming on. And it's going to be super cool. If you're not in the Heartbeat group, if you're look down below, if you're or to the sides, depending on how you're watching this, and come over into the free Heartbeat group. And as a bribe / reward, you get a free $35 class. There's a link to sign up for it for free in there. So come on over. We're going to be doing some cool stuff in there. And other than that, just thank you, Stacy, so much for hanging out with us. And everybody have just the very, very best day. And we will talk to you very, very soon. Bye.